Okay, take a second and just look around you. The room you're sitting in, the device you're watching this on, it all feels incredibly real, objective, and solid, doesn't it? But what if I told you to completely challenge that assumption right now? I really want you to ask yourself, what is reality, really? Welcome to today's explainer. I am beyond thrilled to guide you through this one because it is an absolute mind bender. We are going to cross the boundaries from cognitive psychology straight into theoretical physics to break down some stunning source material that is going to change how you see, well, literally everything. Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, your reality is an illusion. Second, the evolutionary desktop interface. Third, space-time is doomed. Fourth, the science of neuroplasticity. And finally, rewiring your own reality. Let's just jump right in. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, your reality is an illusion. You know, when we walk into a room, we usually assume our eyes are basically like perfect camera lenses, right? Just passive receivers capturing a raw, unfiltered snapshot of the objective truth. But entrepreneur and cognitive AI researcher Rana Gujral presents a totally different, fascinating premise. Our brain is actually acting as an active storyteller. The literal second that light hits your eyes, billions of neurons start this lightning-fast editing process. The brain fills in the gaps, it adds meaning, and it essentially customizes a full-blown production just for you. Gujral's work shows us just how aggressively the brain is editing things behind the scenes. For instance, it paints the world in color from light wavelengths. That means that a shiny red apple isn't actually red out there in the physical world. Your brain is literally painting it red in your mind. It translates chemical interactions into the taste of your morning coffee, and it completely deletes information it decides is unnecessary through selective attention. And get this, your deep expectations can actually override visual reality. Even when you know an optical illusion is totally fake, your brain bends reality in real time just to fit its rigid, pre-programmed expectations. Which brings us to Section 2, the evolutionary desktop interface. So if our brain is constantly editing and, frankly, lying to us, we kind of have to ask why. Well, cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman provides a massive paradigm shift here. He says, and I quote, "Natural selection didn't shape us to see the truth. It shaped us with sensory systems that are like a user interface." This is the core metaphorical anchor for this whole explainer. Evolution didn't optimize us for accuracy. It optimized us for survival. Seeing the absolute raw truth of reality wouldn't actually help us survive. In fact, the sheer staggering complexity of it would completely overwhelm our systems. This is what's known as the interface theory of perception. It suggests that evolution hides objective reality behind a simplified desktop interface made of 3D objects. Just think about your computer screen for a second. When you drag a digital icon to the trash can to delete a file, you aren't calculating the voltages or typing out binary code or trying to understand the microcircuitry inside the machine, right? You're just using a simple, helpful icon. That is exactly what our brain does. It gives us icons, like apples, chairs, and even the physical bodies of other people, so we can successfully navigate reality without having to process the overwhelming underlying code. Moving on to Section 3, and this one is a bit of a trip. Space-time is doomed. Completely independent of cognitive science, modern theoretical physics is actually building a shocking validation of this exact same concept. Modern theoretical physicists like Nima Arkani-Hamed are stating flat out, space-time is doomed. Local realism is dead. This literally means that particles and space-time itself do not exist when they are not being perceived. The old idea that physical objects have real, independent properties whether or not we look at them, that's called local realism. Physics has thoroughly tested it, and it turns out it is entirely false. See, under the old physics, we relied on methodological reductionism. That's the idea that if you just keep digging to smaller and smaller microscopic scales, you'll eventually find deeper laws inside spacetime. But physics hit a hard limit at 10 to the minus 33 centimeters. Spacetime simply ceases to make sense at that scale. So now, the new physics embraces concepts like the holographic principle, which tells us that deeper symmetries exist way beyond spacetime, and that the amount of information in a region of space depends on its surface area, not its volume. The takeaway? Spacetime is not fundamental reality. It is quite literally just a data structure, the format our 3D evolutionary desktop. Let's pivot to Section 4. The science of neuroplasticity. Okay, so if space-time is just a data structure generated by the brain, how does the brain actually construct and update this code? To answer that, we're going to turn to some rigorous research from a recent paper published in the International Journal of Indian Psychology that focuses on nurturing neuroplasticity. This gives us the mechanical breakdown of exactly how our reality interface adapts.
The researchers use this absolutely brilliant metaphor here. Imagine leaving a plastic toy, or maybe a water bottle, out in the blazing hot summer sun. What happens? It melts, it changes shape, it physically adapts to the environment. That is exactly what happens in your brain through neuroplasticity. When you're exposed to new experiences, new information, or new challenges, the neural connections in your brain physically reshape and adapt themselves, just like that melting plastic.
The crucial engine driving this whole process is called Hebbian learning. Basically, it's a type of synaptic plasticity that physically strengthens the connection between two neurons that are activated simultaneously. If a musician practices an instrument, or if you practice a new language, you are repeatedly activating specific neural circuits. You are literally altering and strengthening the physical structure of your brain to master that skill.
Which brings us to one of the most foundational, famous phrases in all of neuroscience. Neurons that fire together, wire together. I really want that to land with you. Repeated actions, repeated thoughts, and repeated emotional responses physically reinforce the reality you experience. Every single time you repeat a pattern, you are solidifying the very hardware that runs your reality interface. All right, let's bring it all home with Section 5, Rewiring Your Own Reality. Here is where it gets super empowering. Since your brain actively wires the script of your reality, you don't have to just be a passive player. You can actively bend that script. Think about the massive breadth of domains we can control. With emotional regulation, through a process called synaptic pruning, we can eliminate excess anxious connections and strengthen calm ones. We can boost our creativity by balancing divergent open-ended thinking with convergent analytical thinking. Through cognitive training, we can manage our cognitive load to process information far more effectively. And with mindfulness, by engaging our task-positive network, we can massively improve our mental clarity. So, how do we actually pull this off in daily life? Well, here are your actionable cheat codes. Step 1. Practice mindfulness and meditation. This physically increases neuroplasticity and actively reduces stress. Step 2. Engage in divergent thinking. Just allow yourself to daydream and embrace ambiguity. This actually forges brand new neural pathways. Step 3. Use cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This empowers you to recognize your own biases and actively rewire your brain by challenging irrational thoughts until healthier pathways become your new default setting. We've gone on quite a journey today, right? From the illusions of our visual cortex all the way to the end of space-time, down into the melting plastic of our own neurons. And honestly, it all leads to this one lingering thought. If your brain writes the script of your reality, what are you going to write next? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I'll see you in the next one.